Story 3. Basement Laundry. I never believed in ghosts. Hell, I barely believed in anything supernatural until I moved into the Meridian apartment on East 42nd Street. Now I triple-check my locks, sleep with every light on, and I haven't done laundry in my own building for 3 months. You need to understand something about apartment living. It's all about the little compromises you make. Thin walls, shared spaces, neighbors who blast music at 2 a.m. But the rent was cheap, the location was perfect for my new job at the marketing firm downtown, and honestly, after living in my parents' basement for 6 months after college, I would have taken a cardboard box if it meant independence. The Meridian was one of those converted buildings from the 1920s. 12 units spread across 4 floors, with original hardwood that creaked in all the right vintage ways. My apartment, 3B, was a decent one-bedroom with enough space for my secondhand furniture and my collection of horror novels. Ironic, considering what happened. The building had character, the landlord said. What he didn't mention was that most of that character seemed to live in the basement. I should have known something was off during my first week. The building had this weird vibe after 9 p.m., like someone had turned down the volume on everything. Conversations became whispers, footsteps got softer, and even the usual urban soundtrack from outside seemed muffled. I chalked it up to good insulation and respectful neighbors. The basement housed the laundry room, storage units, and the building's mechanical systems. Standard apartment building stuff. I've been down there exactly once during my initial tour. A cramped space with 4 ancient washing machines, 3 working dryers, and the kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look like they're dying. Mrs. Chen from 2A had mentioned the basement during my second week. She was probably in her 70s, spoke broken English, but was sweet enough to bring me homemade dumplings when I moved in. "You do laundry yet?" she asked, catching me in the hallway with a basket of dirty clothes. "Not yet. Planning to hit the laundromat on 5th Street. She made this face. Not quite disapproval, but something close to concern. "Building laundry cheaper. But..." She paused, searching for words. "Maybe go morning time. Daytime good. Nighttime..." She shook her head and shuffled back to her apartment. I figured she was just being cautious about basement safety, you know? Old woman, dimly lit space, probably worried about falling down the stairs. Made sense. My first trip to the basement was on a Tuesday morning in October. I'd been putting it off for weeks, making excuses to use the expensive laundromat, but my bank account was screaming at me to try the building's facilities. The basement door was heavy, the kind of industrial steel you'd expect in a converted building. It opened to a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The light switch was one of those old-fashioned toggle switches that made a loud click when you flipped it. The fluorescent lights flickered to life, casting that sick greenish glow over everything. The laundry room was exactly as I remembered. 4 washers lined up against the left wall, 3 dryers against the right, with a folding table in the center. The floor was concrete, painted gray, but worn down to the original surface in high-traffic areas. I loaded my clothes into washer number 2, it seemed to be in the best condition, and fed quarters into the slot. The machine groaned to life, with the kind of sound that suggested it had been doing this job for decades. That's when I heard it. A voice. Faint, but definitely human. Coming from somewhere deeper in the basement. I froze, listening. The washing machine's agitation cycle masked most sounds, but during the brief pauses between cycles, I could make out what sounded like someone talking. Not shouting, not distressed, just talking. My first thought was that someone else was down there, maybe in the storage area. The basement extended beyond the laundry room with a narrow hallway that led to individual storage units for each apartment. Maybe someone was organizing their stuff, talking to themselves, or on the phone. I walked to the entrance of the hallway, peering into the darkness. The fluorescent lights from the laundry room only penetrated about 10 feet before the shadows took over. "Hello?" I called out. The talking stopped immediately. I waited, but there was no response. No footsteps, no door closing, nothing. just the rhythmic churning of my washing machine and the distant hum of the building's heating system. I decided to investigate. The hallway had its own light switch, and when I flipped it, a single bulb illuminated a corridor lined with metal storage unit doors. Each door had a number corresponding to the apartments above. Mine was 3B, about halfway down on the left side. The hallway was empty. Every storage unit door was closed and locked. There was nowhere for someone to hide, no alternate exit I could see. But I could swear I'd heard someone talking. I walked the length of the hallway, checking each door, all locked. At the far end, the corridor took a right turn, leading to what looked like the building's mechanical room. That door was also closed, but it had a small window at eye level. I peered through the dusty glass. Inside, I could see the building's furnace, water heater, and electrical panels. No people. But as I turned to walk back, I heard it again. That voice, clearer now. It was coming from behind me, from the mechanical room. I spun around and looked through the window again. Nothing. The voice continued, and now I could make out words. It was a woman's voice speaking in what sounded like a foreign language? Not Spanish or French, something else. The cadence was strange, almost like she was reciting something. I tried the door handle. Locked, of course. But the voice was definitely coming from inside. I knocked on the door. "Hello? Is someone in there?" The voice stopped again. This time, I heard something else. A sound like footsteps, but not quite right. They were too soft, too measured. Like someone walking on carpet instead of the concrete floor I could see through the window. I waited for maybe 5 minutes, ear pressed to the door, but there was nothing. Just the building's mechanical systems doing their thing. When I got back to the laundry room, my wash cycle was finished. I transferred the clothes to dryer number 1, fed it quarters, and decided to wait upstairs. Something about the basement was making me uncomfortable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Over the next few weeks, I tried to time my laundry visits for peak hours, late morning when other residents might be down there, or early evening when people got home from work. But the Meridian's residents seemed to be creatures of habit, and most of them apparently did their laundry at the same laundromat I'd been using. The few times I encountered other residents in the basement, they were always in a hurry. Quick hellos, focused on their tasks, and gone as soon as their cycles finished. Nobody lingered. Nobody chatted. It was like everyone had an unspoken agreement to get in and get out. I started to notice other things too. The basement was always exactly the same temperature. Not warm, not cold, just neutral. Even in late October, when the weather outside was getting crisp, the basement maintained this weird climate-controlled feeling. The air never moved. No drafts, no circulation. It was like being in a sealed box. And the sounds. During the day, you could hear the building's normal sounds filtering down. Footsteps from the apartments above, pipes gurgling, the occasional door slam. But at night, when I made the mistake of doing laundry after 9 p.m., the basement became unnaturally quiet. The only sounds were whatever machines were running and that persistent, almost subsonic hum that seemed to come from the walls themselves. It was during one of these late-night laundry sessions that I first saw her. I was folding my clothes at the center table, earbuds in, listening to a podcast about true crime, because apparently I hate myself. The dryer had finished its cycle about 10 minutes earlier, and I was taking my time, in no rush to get back to my empty apartment. Movement in my peripheral vision made me look up.
At first, I thought it was just shadows shifting as the fluorescent lights flickered, but then I saw her clearly.
A woman standing at the entrance to the storage hallway. She was maybe in her 40s, wearing a simple dress that looked like it was from another era, not vintage cool, but genuinely old-fashioned. Her hair was pulled back in a style that reminded me of photographs from the 1950s. She was staring directly at me. I pulled out my earbuds. "Hi, I didn't hear you come down." She didn't respond, just kept staring with this expression that I couldn't read. Not hostile, not friendly, just intense. "Are you here to do laundry?" I asked, gesturing to the empty machines. Still nothing, but now she was moving, walking slowly along the wall toward the mechanical room hallway. Her footsteps made no sound on the concrete floor. That's when I realized I hadn't heard the basement door open. I'd been down there for at least 30 minutes, and that door was heavy enough that it made noise every time someone used it. But I hadn't heard anything. I watched her disappear around the corner into the hallway. After a few seconds, I followed. The hallway was empty. I walked to the end, checking each storage unit door. All closed, all locked. I looked through the mechanical room window. Nothing. But I could hear that voice again. The same woman's voice I had heard during my first visit, speaking in that foreign language. It was coming from the mechanical room, but the room was empty. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, listening. The voice was constant now, like someone reading from a book or reciting a prayer. The words had a rhythm to them, a cadence that was almost hypnotic. When I finally got back to the laundry room, my clothes were gone. Not stolen, moved. Someone had taken my laundry out of the basket where I had left it and folded it neatly on the table. Each item was perfectly creased, arranged in a way that was almost militaristic in its precision. I grabbed my clothes and got the hell out of there. The next morning, I called the building manager, Mr. Rodriguez. He was a decent guy, probably in his 50s, who'd been managing the Meridian for about 15 years. "Rodriguez? Hi, Mr. Rodriguez, it's Jake from 3B. I had a question about the basement." "What about it?" "Well, I was down there last night doing laundry and I saw someone I didn't recognize. A woman, maybe in her 40s, wearing an old-fashioned dress. I was wondering if maybe she was visiting someone or if there was maintenance work being done." There was a long pause. "What time was this?" "Around 10 p.m. Another pause. "Jake, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Have you been drinking? Using any substances?" "What? No, I'm not." "Why would you ask that?" "Because in 15 years of managing this building, I've had this exact conversation maybe a dozen times. Always the same description. Woman in an old dress appears in the basement, doesn't talk." My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that there's no woman matching that description living in this building. There's no maintenance staff that fits that description. And I'm saying that every person who's called me about her has moved out within 6 months. I didn't know how to finish that sentence. Look, Jake, you seem like a good tenant. You pay rent on time, you're quiet, you don't cause problems. So I'm going to give you some advice. Do your laundry during the day. If you have to go down there at night, don't go alone. And if you see her again, don't try to talk to her. Just finish what you're doing and leave." "Mr. Rodriguez, what exactly are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that some buildings have histories. The Meridian has been here for almost a century. People have lived here, died here, left pieces of themselves here. Most of the time, those pieces are harmless, but sometimes..." He trailed off. "Sometimes what?" "Sometimes they want something, and until they get it, they stick around." I hung up, feeling more confused than reassured. Mr. Rodriguez had basically confirmed that other residents had seen this woman, but he'd also made it sound like she was some kind of ghost, which was insane. But that night, I found myself researching the building's history online. Public records, newspaper archives, anything I could find about the Meridian Apartments. The building had been constructed in 1928 as a residential hotel. During the Depression, it had been converted to apartments. In the 1940s, it had housed war workers and their families. The 1950s and 60s saw it become a typical urban apartment building with the usual turnover of residents. I found one interesting article from 1953. A woman named Eleanor Vasquez had gone missing from apartment 2B. She'd been a seamstress, worked from home, kept to herself. Neighbors reported hearing her sewing machine running at all hours, even after she'd disappeared. According to the article, police had searched the building thoroughly, but found no trace of her. Her apartment was undisturbed, her belongings intact. She'd simply vanished. The investigation had focused on the basement, where her body was eventually found 3 weeks later. She'd apparently fallen down the stairs to the mechanical room and hit her head. The door had somehow locked behind her, trapping her body in the room where she'd died of her injuries. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. The article included a photograph of Eleanor Vasquez. She was wearing a simple dress, hair pulled back in a 1950s style. She looked exactly like the woman I'd seen in the basement. I stared at that photograph for a long time. The rational part of my brain insisted that it was just a coincidence, that I was letting my imagination run wild, but the description was too perfect, too exact.
The next day, I cornered Mrs. Chen in the lobby. "Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something about the basement?" She looked nervous immediately. "What about the basement? Have you ever seen anyone down there who doesn't live in the building?" She glanced around the lobby, making sure we were alone. "You see her." It wasn't a question. "You've seen her too?" "Many times. She no hurts people. She just confused. She thinks she still live here." "What does she want?" Mrs. Chen shook her head. "She looking for something. Something she lose, but she never find it. So she keep looking." "What did she lose?" "I don't know, but she been looking for 50 years. That night, I made a decision that I still think was incredibly stupid. I was going to go down to the basement and try to communicate with Eleanor Vasquez. If she was really a ghost, if she was really trapped down there looking for something, maybe I could help her find it. I waited until after midnight when the building was quiet. I grabbed a flashlight. The fluorescent lights in the basement had been flickering more frequently, and I didn't want to be caught in the dark. The basement door was heavier than usual, like it was resisting my efforts to open it. When I finally got it open, the staircase was completely dark. The light switch didn't work. I used my flashlight to navigate the stairs. The laundry room was empty, all the machines silent. But I could hear that voice again, coming from the mechanical room. It was louder now, more urgent. I walked to the storage hallway, my flashlight beam dancing across the concrete walls. The voice was definitely coming from behind the mechanical room door. I knocked softly. "Eleanor, my name is Jake. I live in 3B. I want to help you." The voice stopped. I waited, but there was no response. I tried the door handle, still locked. "Eleanor, I know you're looking for something. What did you lose?" This time, I heard footsteps. Soft, measured steps, like someone pacing back and forth. They were coming from inside the mechanical room. I pressed my ear to the door. The footsteps continued, but now I could hear something else. A sound like fabric rustling, like someone handling cloth or clothing. "Are you looking for something you were making? Something you were sewing?" The footsteps stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the door handle turned. The door swung open slowly, revealing the mechanical room. It was exactly as I'd seen it through the window. Furnace, water heater, electrical panels. But now there was something else. In the far corner, barely visible in my flashlight beam, was an old sewing machine.
It was sitting on a small table surrounded by bolts of fabric and spools of thread. The machine looked like it was from the 1950s, with that distinctive Art Deco styling. And standing behind it was Eleanor Vasquez.
She looked exactly as she had in the newspaper photograph, but now I could see her more clearly. Her dress was simple but well made, the kind of thing a skilled seamstress might wear. Her hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. But her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils. The entire eye, from corner to corner, was a flat, empty black. She was holding a piece of fabric, examining it in the dim light. When she noticed me, she looked up and smiled. It wasn't a threatening smile, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a very long time for something to happen. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft, with a slight accent that I couldn't place. "I've been waiting. What are you waiting for?" She held up the fabric. In my flashlight beam, I could see that it was a child's dress, maybe for a girl of 7 or 8. It was beautiful work, hand-sewn with tiny stitches and delicate detailing. "I was making this for my daughter," she said, "for her birthday, but I never finished it." "Where is your daughter?" Eleanor's smile faltered. "She's waiting for me. She's been waiting for so long." "Eleanor, you died in 1953. Your daughter, she's not waiting for you anymore." The black eyes focused on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "No, she's upstairs, in 2B. She's waiting for her birthday dress." I realized what was happening. Eleanor didn't know she was dead. She was trapped in the basement, trying to finish a dress for a daughter who had probably died decades ago. "Let me help you finish it," I said. Eleanor looked at me suspiciously. "You know how to sew?" "No, but I can learn." "Or maybe your daughter doesn't need the dress anymore. Maybe she just needs you to let go." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Eleanor's expression changed from confusion to something approaching anger. "She needs her dress," she said, her voice taking on a harsh edge. "I promised her. I always keep my promises." "Eleanor, look around you. This isn't your apartment. This is the basement. You fell down the stairs 50 years ago. You died here." She shook her head violently. "No, I'm just working late. Rosa is upstairs, sleeping. She's waiting for her birthday dress." "Rosa isn't upstairs, Eleanor. Rosa grew up. She lived her whole life. She's gone." Eleanor screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was the sound of metal tearing, of glass shattering, of something fundamental breaking apart. The sewing machine began operating by itself, the needle moving up and down at impossible speed. The fabric in Eleanor's hands began to smoke and char. The lights in the mechanical room, lights that hadn't been there moments before, began to strobe. The temperature kept dropping. I could see my breath in the flashlight beam. And Eleanor was changing. Her neat 1950s appearance was dissolving, revealing something underneath. Her skin was gray and mottled, her hair stringy and matted. The simple dress was torn and stained with something dark, but the worst part was her eyes. They weren't black anymore. They were empty. Literally empty, like someone had scooped out everything behind them and left only hollow sockets. "Rosa is waiting," she said, her voice now a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Rosa is waiting for her dress."
I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut behind me. I was trapped in the mechanical room with a very angry ghost and a sewing machine that was operating at supernatural speed. Eleanor advanced on me, holding the charred remains of the child's dress. "You don't understand. I have to finish it. I have to keep my promise." "Eleanor, listen to me. Rosa isn't waiting anymore. She doesn't need the dress. She needs you to rest." "No!" The scream came from everywhere, the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The sewing machine's needle was moving so fast it was just a blur. "She's waiting! She's always waiting!" That's when I remembered something Mrs. Chen had said. Eleanor was looking for something she lost. But what if it wasn't the dress? What if it was something else entirely? "Eleanor, where is Rosa now?" The question seemed to confuse her. She stopped advancing, tilting her head like a bird. "Where is Rosa right now?" I repeated. She's upstairs, in 2B, waiting for her birthday dress." "No, Eleanor. Rosa isn't in 2B. Rosa is with you. She's been with you this whole time." Eleanor's hollow eyes seemed to focus on something I couldn't see. "Rosa? She's here, Eleanor. She's been here waiting for you to notice her. She doesn't need the dress. She just needs her mother." The mechanical stopped. The temperature in the room began to return to normal. Eleanor's appearance shifted again, becoming more human, more like the woman in the newspaper photograph. "Rosa," she whispered. I couldn't see Rosa, but Eleanor clearly could. She was looking at something just to my left, her face transforming with a joy and relief that was almost painful to witness. "My baby," she said. "My sweet baby. I'm so sorry I kept you waiting." Eleanor set down the burned fabric and reached out with both hands, as if picking up a small child. She held empty air against her chest, rocking gently. "Mama's here," she whispered. "Mama's finally here." The mechanical room was getting brighter, but not from any light source I could identify. It was like the air itself was becoming luminous. Eleanor and her invisible daughter were at the center of it, and they were both becoming transparent. "Thank you," Eleanor said, looking directly at me. Her eyes were normal now, brown and kind. "Thank you for helping me remember." "Eleanor, wait. What happened to you?"
"How did you really die?" She smiled sadly. "I was trying to finish Rosa's dress. I was working so late and I was tired. I went to the basement to use the washing machine to clean the fabric. I slipped on the stairs. When I woke up, I was here, and Rosa was crying upstairs, and I couldn't get to her. But Rosa wasn't upstairs, was she?" Eleanor's smile became peaceful. "No, Rosa was with me. She was always with me. I just couldn't see her because I was so worried about the dress, about keeping my promise. But promises don't matter when you're together." The light was getting brighter. Eleanor and Rosa were almost completely translucent now. "Will you be okay?" I asked. "We'll be fine," Eleanor said. "We'll be together. And Jake, thank you for listening. Not many people listen anymore." The light flashed, and they were gone. The mechanical room was just a mechanical room again. No sewing machine, no fabric, no ghost. Just building equipment and the smell of old metal. The door opened easily now. I walked back through the laundry room and up the stairs, my flashlight beam dancing ahead of me. When I reached the main floor, I realized I was shaking. I never saw Eleanor again. The basement returned to being just a basement. Creaky, poorly lit, but not haunted. Other residents started using the laundry room at night again. Mrs. Chen mentioned that the strange sounds had stopped. But I still think about that night. About Eleanor trapped for 50 years by her own guilt and love. About Rosa waiting patiently for her mother to notice her. About the power of promises and the importance of knowing when to let go. I moved out of the Meridian 6 months later. Not because of Eleanor. She was at peace now.
but because I'd learned something about apartment living that I couldn't unlearn. Sometimes the walls are thin enough that you can hear the past bleeding through, and sometimes that past needs someone to listen. I still live in apartments. I still do my laundry in basement facilities, but now I pay attention to the sounds, the temperatures, the feelings that spaces carry. Because I've learned that buildings remember everything: the joy, the sorrow, the love, the loss. And sometimes they need someone to help them remember how to let go. If you're living in an apartment building, especially an old one, pay attention to the basement. Listen for voices that don't belong to anyone living. Notice if the temperature feels wrong, if the air doesn't move the way it should. Most of the time, it's nothing. Just old buildings settling, pipes gurgling, the normal sounds of urban life. But sometimes, it's someone who needs help. Someone who's been waiting a very long time for another person to simply listen. Because the dead don't always know they're dead, and sometimes they just need someone to help them remember how to rest.